Is this the dagger?
What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the On the Ball podcast on the Right Way Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Pranav Shararaman, joined by my co-hosts, Thomas Stapleton, Christian DeBlock, and Will Laughlin. Guys, how are you doing today?
Doing good. Can't wait to talk some hoops.
Good, ready to talk. Let's go.
Yeah, I'm so excited for this show. You know, we're going to have a special guest coming on in a little bit.
You sound so excited, Will. You sound so excited.
So excited, man.
All right, but with that being said, guys, make sure to download our mobile app, the TWSN mobile app. It's the best way to access all of our content, so make sure you do that when you can. And with that being said, let's start off the show. So there have been multiple coaching hires going around the NBA. Let's start off with the Houston Rockets hiring Stephen Silas as their new head coach. I don't know much about the guy, about his schemes or whatever, so I'm going to start off with Thomas on this one. What are your thoughts on this hire by the Houston Rockets, and does this really change anything in terms of the Houston Rockets title odds?
I'm kind of on the same wavelength as you. I really don't know too much about the guy. I feel like, though, with these like out of left field hires, it either goes really, really well, like they're a really good coach, or they're just not qualified enough for the job. I don't know which direction this is going to take, but it's a change. I have always felt like they needed to move on from Mike D'Antoni. Quite frankly, I don't think Mike D'Antoni is that great of a head coach in the NBA. I don't think his style of play will lead you much championship success. Stephen Silas, I really don't know if he's a championship caliber head coach. I didn't hear of him until he was hired. But I feel neutral about the move. I mean, I can't say I like it because I don't know much about the guy, but I can't hate on it because, again, I really don't know much about him.
Yeah, I agree with Thomas. I think it's a hard move to understand at this moment in time because we have never seen him coach. The good thing is he's been in the league for a while. He's been an assistant since 2000, and he was with an offense last year that was pretty potent. So that is a good sign, but we talked about it a couple weeks ago. The Rockets situation right now looks really weird. We don't know what they're going to do, if they can get rid of Russell Westbrook through trade. Are they going to get rid of James Harden? So while it seems like a move that possibly could be successful down the line, I'm not too sure it could overcome the situation that the Rockets are in right now, because the Rockets' championship run, in that sense that they could have possibly won one in the last couple of years, is now over. So I don't see it being a move that gets them back into contention, but it's not also a bad move that, in that sense, would kill their team. So I think it's an okay move, but we don't know yet.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think this could be an indication that they're not planning on trading James Harden or Russell Westbrook, or at least James Harden. Oh, we got Aiden joining us. But yeah, I think this is an indication that they're not going to move on from James Harden quite yet, just because he is an offensive coach. He's helped teams, like the Mavericks, obviously have such a deadly offense last year. And he's also coached a lot of elite guards like Luka Doncic. He's coached Steph Curry and Kemba Walker before. So he has that kind of experience. As you mentioned, Christian, like nearly 20 years of experience as an assistant. So that's good. I'm just interested to see what offensive system or how he tweaks or really changes, completely turns around Mike D'Antoni's system that made James Harden put up these huge numbers. So I'm curious to see what kind of offensive system he employs for James Harden and Russell Westbrook, as long as they're still on the team, obviously, going into next season. I think after that, that's really when we can judge this move. But for now, you kind of just have to see, all right, what kind of experience do they have? What kind of, what's their coaching style? And then how could this fit? But for now, we can't really make too many judgments just because we haven't seen him as a head coach, period, yet.
Aiden, how about you? We're unable to hear you.
Mute.
So So I'll continue until Aiden's audio gets fixed. But in terms of Steven Silas, he's a good offensive coach, like Will attested to. He's coached multiple guards like Steph Curry, Luka Doncic. So we obviously see what he can do with guard talent. And the Houston Rockets are an offense oriented around two-star guards. James Harden, their superstar, and Russell Westbrook, their lower tier star. But in terms of the Houston Rockets, it's just a weird situation, like Christian mentioned earlier. I won't really blame him if he doesn't have much success in his time with the Houston Rockets or his first year, because that situation is just weird in terms of the fit with Russell Westbrook. I know that Russell Westbrook isn't going to be traded because he had a say in who's going to be hired as head coach, and both him and Harden signed off on Steven Silas. So I don't really see Russell Westbrook getting traded. So it's just an interesting move. I don't really have too many negative thoughts on it. He's going to be good offensively for an offensive-oriented team. It's just the fit with Russell Westbrook and the fact that they have so many pieces on that team that doesn't really work together. They don't really have a big man. It's just going to be interesting to see moving forward. But we're going to shift gears here to another former Houston Rockets coach right now, and that's Mike D'Antoni. He is now signed on to be the Brooklyn Nets assistant coach, which is interesting because he's joining his former best players team. He's going to be an assistant to the guy he coached, Steve Nash, and he's also going to be an assistant alongside his other team, his other player, which he coached, Amari Stoudemire, which is going to be very interesting. Will, I'm going to start off with you on this one. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so the Nets, they hire both Mike D'Antoni and Ime Udoka. So this is really setting up to be a very interesting and intriguing season for the Brooklyn Nets. And to me, it's really shaping up to be the ultimate boom or bust experiment when it comes to this. I mean, you have coaches, a coaching staff, and players that were a part of such a fast and explosive 7-second offense in Phoenix, once upon a time ago. And now they're all together in a little bit of a different form with Steve Nash being the lead man, which is interesting because what's the dynamic going to be like between Mike D'Antoni, who's had so much head coaching experience, including coaching Steve Nash, and now Steve Nash is like the head man. So it's going to be interesting to see that dynamic, especially since Steve Nash has never been a head coach before or a coach period in the NBA. So it's going to be really interesting. But to me, it's just such an interesting experiment to see because you have those pieces with a fast, explosive offense when it comes to the cup, but you also have two heavy isolation scorers that are just as good as it gets in the league, in Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. And then you also, to address the Udoka move, because he's also now an assistant, as well as Jacques Vaughn. So Udoka, that's a pretty good addition just because he is more of a defensive-oriented coach. And that's definitely something the Brooklyn Nets could definitely use because we see that they can be an offensively potent team. But defense, I mean, you need defense to win a championship. And so that's a solid move from a coaching standpoint. But to me, this is either setting up to be a perfect match and a perfect mix, or it could absolutely backfire. And I'm not quite sure which one I'm leaning toward right now. I'm going to have to see, obviously, what they do in free agency. And if they make a trade potentially, we've mentioned Drew Holiday countless times. That would still be a really good move if it's in the cards for them. But to me, the Brooklyn Nets, if they're going to boom, it's really depending on Kevin Durant's health, obviously, and also is Steve Nash in full control of the team, or is Mike D'Antoni kind of running things since he has so much head coaching experience? Steve Nash has none. So what's that dynamic going to be like? Is Mike D'Antoni going to be willing to take more of a back seat? Hopefully he is. I mean, he's obviously him even taking on a role like this, he would hopefully be able to think to himself, all right, well, I'm not going to have as much power as I did. So I think he's going to be willing to accept a smaller role as an assistant. It could be a stepping stone, honestly, for Mike D'Antoni, just because he has so much experience. So we'll see. It may not be a long-term thing, especially if they aren't in the championship picture, don't make the finals. But to me, this is just straight up either going to be such a boom or bust. And to me, the Brooklyn Nets are the ultimate boom or bust team going into this season.
Honestly, I can't say I like the move. I'm just not a fan of having too many heads at the table. I'm just not a fan of taking a bunch of guys who could be NBA caliber head coaches. Because let's be real, Mike D'Antoni can still be a head coach in this league. I'm confident Ime Udoka could be a head coach in this league. So if you have a bunch of guys at the table, they're going to all have a bunch of different ideas. And I'm just not a fan of like almost coach super teams or whatever they are. Like I can't say I'm a fan of the move. I've never been a fan of Mike D'Antoni in general. It's going to be interesting, but right now I'm going to give this. I don't like it.
Yeah, I agree with Thomas. I'm concerned. I believe that there's at least a good chance that Mike D'Antoni is going to implement a lot of the ways that he ran with Steve Nash in Phoenix, which wasn't particularly successful long term as in a championship success, and in Houston as well upon other situations. So I'm concerned in that sense because I feel like as Steve Nash, who has no coaching experience, might listen to him enough to the point where they implement an offense that kind of resembles kind of what they ran in Houston, which if that is the case, while there is a better offense and a better team in general, that could end up costing them a chance at being in the NBA Finals this coming season. So I think if they don't make the NBA Finals, because this team has the ability to make it if KD is healthy, we could see Mike D'Antoni be out after 1 year. I don't personally love it, but we'll see what happens.
Aiden, how about you?
Yeah, when I look at this signing, I see the Steve Nash signing was clearly for ego management. When we saw Brad Stevens and Kyrie Irving in Boston, it didn't work. Not because Brad Stevens is a bad head coach from a tactical standpoint, but it was because he couldn't manage the big stars. That's not the way Brad Stevens works. He's not afraid to give his third or fourth option the final shot, and that's not how Kyrie rolled. Now here in Brooklyn, they realize they have KD and Kyrie. These are two guys who have, very interesting characters. We'll just say that, very unique characters. And the signing of Steve Nash was solely for ego management. This guy has never coached a game in his life, as far as I'm concerned, at least not at the pro level. He has no coaching experience, but why did they bring him in? It was because he was going to get the respect of KD and Kyrie. He is an all-time great, and those are the guys they respect. They don't want these nerds. No offense to Brad Stevens, but they don't want those types of guys to be their coach. They bring in Mike D'Antoni now. This is where it gets interesting for me. I don't know what the Brooklyn Nets are exactly doing here. You want the complete and honest truth? They signed Steve Nash, again, for the ego management, but then you bring in Mike D'Antoni, who's, again, a strategical guy. So I'm not really too sure. Maybe they just felt like they needed somebody in the room, somebody who knew Steve Nash. Obviously, they have the connection from Phoenix, and they needed somebody who kind of knew how to just draw plays and help him become a better coach from a strategical standpoint, I guess you could say. But I am confused. Similar to Thomas, I'm not a huge fan of the signing.
So in terms of signing Mike D'Antoni, so Steve Nash, like Aiden said, is a ego management coach. He doesn't really have any coaching experience. I'm not sure how it's going to work out. I think he's going to be successful, one of those hires where you take a chance and the guy will eventually end up being successful. But in terms of hiring Mike D'Antoni, it just doesn't make much sense. Like, I get it. He's a great offensive mastermind, and he would be a great assistant coach or a head coach. But with Brooklyn, it just doesn't make much sense hiring him as an assistant when you already have Jack Vaughn, Amari Stoudemire, Ime Udoka, or I'm not sure, is that how you say it?
Udoka. It's fine.
Udoka. So you have all those guys, and you add Mike D'Antoni to that mix. Like Thomas said, at some point it just gets overwhelming with coaches. Like KD and Kyrie did mention on the Ace Ceteris podcast that, one day this guy's going to be the head coach, and then one day Kyrie's going to be the head coach. I'm like, that's not how it's going to work. That's not how championship basketball works, Kyrie. That's not how championship basketball works, KD. You need one guy. You need a clear chain of command, and I don't really think Brooklyn has that right now, which is kind of concerning.
Yeah, honestly, that quote now makes a lot more sense. Like this move makes a lot more sense considering that quote. Them hiring like a previous coach and two other guys who could be head coaches in Jacques Vaughn or Ime Udoka. Also, we've seen, just this past year with the Clippers had Ty Lue, previous head coach, Sam Cassell, potential head coach, and obviously Doc Rivers. Those are three guys who could be head coaches on three separate teams, and it didn't really work out. Obviously, it's not apples to apples at all, but you're absolutely right. This could just as easily as it could boom, it could also bust. Personally, I'm so on the fence of which one it's going to be. I'm going to have to see just the roster, come whenever the season does start. And I think, all your points are valid. It's definitely going to be interesting to see.
So with that being said, we're gonna move on from the coaching hires, and we're gonna get to some draft talk. So there's teams that we think should trade up in this draft. Some teams that should trade down. So we're gonna start off with teams that should trade up. Which teams do you guys think should trade up in this draft class? In order to acquire a franchise player or trade back and acquire more depth. And before we get to that, Pablo did have a comment in our comment section, so I'll get to that real quick. Does Daryl Morey, who just got hired by the 76ers, as we all know, make a move for James Harden? And the answer is, what is he going to give up? You don't give up Joel Embiid for James Harden because that would be utterly pointless, in my opinion. Ben Simmons does not hold as much value as you think he would. He is very young, but Ben Simmons is your most tradable asset, and that's probably all that Philly has to offer. Matisse Thybulle is a good young player, but with a player like James Harden, who's in the middle of his prime, I'm not sure that Philly has enough to go get him.
Yeah, I agree. I think James Harden and Joel Embiid is a perfect combination, but I just don't see why Houston would do that. Also, if you're planning on keeping Russell Westbrook, or if you have to keep him by choice, Ben Simmons and Russell Westbrook, that is quite possibly the worst pairing in NBA history.
I agree with you. Russell Westbrook and Ben Simmons screams no ability to shoot, and even if you threw like 3 shooters along with that, that just does not. That screams a very bad team. So I wouldn't even see this happening. And while Joel Embiid and James Harden sounds like a nice combo, I don't see that Philly has enough because they have a terrible contract from Al Horford and bad one as well with Tobias Harris. So I don't see it happening.
Yeah, the only way I see this happening is if at the end of next season, the Sixers fail again, despite Doc Rivers being there, despite Daryl Morey, and despite Ben Simmons, being healthy. It just doesn't work out again for the Sixers. They lose in the first round, and they end up wanting to trade either Embiid or Simmons. And I guess Simmons would probably be the better piece for Houston. And Houston, on the other end of the coin, they would also fail. They don't get out of the first round or whatever, since the West is getting even better, and really Houston is just staying stagnant. So I could easily see both of them failing. So I see the logic in this. It's just a little bit too far-fetched to me. Like you guys mentioned, Embiid and Harden, that's a really good combination. And, if Houston is going to start over, Ben Simmons is a pretty good piece to start over with. Obviously, you would trade Russell Westbrook as well because there's no way you're putting Ben Simmons and Russell Westbrook together. So if you did this deal, then you would obviously have to trade Russell Westbrook and probably get pieces or draft picks and pick people in the draft that would fit with Ben Simmons, which shouldn't be too hard. Just get guys who can shoot. So I can see some of the reasoning behind this. It just seems a little bit too far-fetched at this moment in time.
To kind of go off what Will said at the end there, with the shooting, Philly has to keep it simple this offseason. Don't trade for Russell Westbrook. I'm not even sure they should trade for James Harden unless, they get like a steal for him. But you have Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. Now, I know there have been questions, can this duo play? Yes, they can play together. Go back to 2017, 2018. It's been their most successful season out of the past 3, and ironically, that was 3 seasons ago. You'd think this season would be their most successful, considering Simmons and Embiid continue to develop. And although they're getting better, the team got worse. Elton Brand blew it up. They had so much shooting. That was why that offense was so successful. Actually, I saw this. I read it in an article about a month ago. The 76ers had the highest offensive rating in a half-court set in NBA history in 2017, 2018. And you look at it, Ben Simmons you have to supply him with shooting. You have to get shooting around him for spacing. Obviously, we've seen that. Ben Simmons hasn't been moved to power forward, but he can play point guard due to his playmaking ability, his slashing ability, but you need the shooters around him. Philly had a ton of shooting around him, and it was looking great. But then they go out and they got rid of a ton of shooters, and they are trying to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. We look at the Al Horford signing. We look at the Tobias Harris signing. What was Elton Brand, a former big man himself, what was he trying to do? He was trying to get height. Obviously, that was a huge roster they have in terms of height, but he's also trying to get shooting. You look at it, Al Horford, Tobias Harris, they're not 40% guys from 3. But they bring size and shooting. He liked that combination. He wanted to kind of get bigger and kind of overwhelm teams with their size and be able to stop, guys like Giannis by building a wall. But he also wanted to keep shooting, but he failed. Al Horford, Tobias Harris, those guys don't get the job done. You need the really good shooters. And if you look at the history, I don't have a list right in front of me, but Elton Brand gave up so many shooters, and now this team is deprived of it. So if I'm the Philadelphia 76ers, I'm not looking to blow it up or make some big move for a start. Keep it simple. I know they're in a tough spot. They've dug themselves in a hole because of the current contracts on their team, such as Al Horford and Tobias Harris, and the list goes on and on, it seems like, but mostly those two guys. Just keep it simple. Sign some 3-and-D wings. Just get shooting. That's all they need to do to become a successful team again.
Yeah, but even then, the Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid duo, despite them having some amount of success in the past, they're just not a good basketball fit in general. So, I mean, if you have a chance to go get a James Harden, I wouldn't pass up on that. But in terms of the Philadelphia 76ers, where it all went wrong was trading for Tobias Harris. The Jimmy Butler trade, I love the Jimmy Butler trade, even though he left. But the fact that they traded a spot-up shooter, a great spot-up shooter, in Larry Shamet for Tobias Harris, who they used as a spot-up shooter, that just ruined the entirety of their title hopes in a sense. But we're going to move forward here. We're going to rank our breakout teams of the 2020-2021 NBA season. So what teams do you guys think are going to massively improve, or like a most improved team? Will, I'm going to start off with you on this one.
Okay. So for the West, I'm going to go with the Phoenix Suns. And I know I just think they're going to show more signs of who they were in the bubble than what they were like in the regular season, and also at the beginning of last season. Because at the beginning of the season in October, they were doing pretty well. So I think they're going to show more of those signs. It's going to be tough to make the playoffs just for nearly every team in the West, except for obviously like the Lakers, the Clippers, the Warriors. They'll obviously be locks for the playoffs. But nearly every other team, 5 through 8, the 5 through 8 seed are going to have a tough time making the playoffs just because the West is so stacked. I mean, I don't really see one terrible, just god-awful team in the Western Conference this year. Like even the Kings have, De'Aaron Fox is a really good player. And they'll be competitive to some degree, and even the Timberwolves have talent on their roster as well. But I'm going with the Phoenix Suns in large part due to the fact that they have the ability to draft hopefully a point guard in this draft at 10. You look at guys like, we're going to talk about him a little bit later, but Tyrell Terry or Akira Lewis or someone like that to pair with Devin Booker, because that's really the last missing piece from just a roster perspective when it comes to their future talent, because they have the wings and Mikal Bridges. They have Kelly Oubre, who was injured, but he should be coming back and should still be good on the roster. And they obviously have the big man and DeAndre Ayton. So really the last piece is that point guard next to Devin Booker, which they've basically lacked since he's been there. Obviously, you have Ricky Rubio, who's a good veteran, but you need someone for the future. And if they did draft a Terry or a Kira Lewis, I wouldn't expect them to start right away. Ricky Rubio would probably still start, but maybe it would change over the course of the season. When it comes to the Suns, I really just think offensively they're gonna break out, and I see DeAndre Ayton and Devin Booker being one of the best uprising duos, and making a case. They're not going to be a top 5 duo, but they're probably going to be a top 10 duo after this season, and they're going to be climbing up that list. I think the pieces offensively just fit all around with this team, and you have Mikal Bridges, who obviously brings the defense. And if you draft a Terry or a Kara Lewis, that's a pretty good fit offensively next to Devin Booker. And so I'm just expecting this Phoenix Suns team to carry on a lot of what they did last year. Off bench piece wise, they have Javon Carter, who's a really good perimeter defender. He'll obviously come off the bench. Off the bench. So I'm just expecting the Suns team to really hone in what they did a lot more last year. Also, DeAndre Ayton was not playing. Obviously got suspended for some of the seasons. So that obviously derailed a little bit in terms of, the Suns weren't really able to do too well without him. And then once he came back, they were able to improve somewhat. So I'm expecting the Suns team to show more of who they were in the bubble and to be a playoff contender.
All right. So out west, I didn't pick a team because I can't realistically see any team drastically improving to become a playoff team because there's just so much talent out there. And I think maybe we could see a team like the Pelicans, slip into that 8 seed or something like that. But in the East, there's one clear team that I think is going to take a major step forward next year. And that's the Atlanta Hawks. The Atlanta Hawks have stated several times that they want to win right now. They have pieces. First of all, they've got Trae Young, one of the best point guards in basketball, who just came off a season where he averaged 29 points per game and 9 assists. People just seem to overlook that for whatever reason. They've got John Collins, who missed 25 games last year, but put up 21 and 10 on near 50, 40, 90. They've got Cam Reddish, my pick for most improved player next season. If you look at his month-by-month production from I believe it was October to March, it was incredible. Month by month, he got better. They've got DeAndre Hunter. They've got pieces. And then in the draft, they've got the 6th overall pick. They've got cap space. They have got everything it takes to be a great team. And I honestly I don't think they're going to sneak into the playoffs. I think they're going to be a top 5 seed in the East next year. That's how high I am. I think they are going to break out in a big way.
That's some hot take right there.
I stand by it 100%. I believe that they will be a top 5 seed in the East next season.
Hold on. For the Western Conference, though, I know that this is going to be a generic answer because people are saying, well, no team's going to drastically improve from last season to this season. And I'm going to have to say it, but the Golden State Warriors, I mean, just record-wise, I know that everybody has it on their minds. Everybody knows they're going to finish at the top. But, I mean, they're going from the 15th seed to they're going to be at least top 3. So I know that was on everybody's mind. But, I mean, come on, that's a drastic improvement.
I mean, yeah. But before I get to Christian here, with the Golden State Warriors, with teams like the Nets, those were teams that had injuries. They weren't like teams that – we improved drastically. No, once you just add a couple players, they're going to be better. So, I mean, I don't really consider them as massively improving like that because they're just getting healthy and getting to the caliber that we expect them to be. Right. But I'm going to get to Christian right now.
Yeah, so for the Western Conference, if you looked at the standings from last season, 1 through 7 was within 9 games, so it's hard to have a team go from 7 and move up like the Mavericks. But I will go with the Mavericks. I think they have a chance to be a top 4 or 5 team in the West. Definitely if they can improve on the weaknesses they had and they showed in that Clippers series, which was really all of the defensive metrics honestly show that they were just struggling. They'll bring back Dwight Powell, who they really didn't have any big men besides Porzingis who got hurt. But I think that team with Doncic and Porzingis another year, and maybe they can surround him with even more shooting than they already had, plus more big men. I think that team definitely has the chance to be a top 5 team in the West, especially if the Rockets regress. Maybe the Thunder, if they trade Chris Paul, we don't know what's going to happen with that situation. And then definitely, I love the pick, Thomas, for Atlanta in the East. I mean, I don't know if I can go as far as say it's a top 5 team in the East, but this team's got the ability to be a really potent offense with wings that could really be good defenders, honestly. DeAndre Hunter really showed it at Virginia, and I think he could turn into a guy that maybe finishes in all defensive, maybe next year, maybe the year following. But I think that team has the ability to make a huge jump next season, and I definitely see them in the playoffs next year.
So in terms of teams that are going to improve, I have 3 teams that are on my mind. You guys have exhausted them so far, but I'm going to start off with with the Eastern Conference. The Atlanta Hawks are my pick as well. I don't have them as high as Thomas does as a top 5 seed, but I have them making the playoffs. They're going to add another great player in the draft. They have an improving Cam Reddish and improving DeAndre Hunter. John Collins is a really good player. Trae Young, we already know what he brings to the table. In terms of the Atlanta Hawks, offensively, I think they're pretty good. It's just their defense has been sort of suspect, and that's what I'm really concerned about. In the draft, they should target a defensive guard or a defensive big. They have Clint Capella, so actually they don't need a defensive big. They just need a defensive player in the draft. I don't think they need much more offensive firepower. But I think the Atlanta Hawks are set to make a big splash in the Eastern Conference. The Dallas Mavericks obviously come to mind. I think they're going to be title contenders. They're not going to be at the top of the title contender list, but they could definitely contend for a title. They almost beat the Clippers without Porzingis. Like Luka Doncic scored 40 points against the Clippers and beat them without Kristaps Porzingis. With Kristaps Porzingis, we might have been talking about the Clippers as a first round exit. It might have come to that if Kristaps Porzingis was healthy. So I think with an improved Dallas Mavericks team, they go out in free agency, get a defensive forward. Their offense is already one of the best of all time. So I think they'll massively improve, be a top 3, top 4 seed in the Western Conference. And the final one, Will did mention it, and I'll transition to our next subject. With this team, it's the Phoenix Suns. You did mention they need a new point guard. That's always been their problem. In the Devin Booker era, they've never had a franchise-changing point guard. They had a chance to get Luka Doncic, a generational talent, and they passed up on him. DeAndre Ayton is a good player, but they passed up on Luka Doncic, and that's what they have to live with. But in this draft, I don't think you settle for Akira Lewis at number 10. You have to be aggressive. You have to trade up. Last year, the Suns traded down to get Cam Johnson. They settled. And this year, you trade up. You take the best talent available, and I think they have to trade up for Killian Hayes. I think him next to Devin Booker, you have a playmaking shot creator right next to Devin Booker who could just score at will. I think that'll be one of the best guard duos in the NBA as a rising young guard duo. And then you have DeAndre Ayton manning it down in the middle. And then, yeah, I think that's a great young team in the Western Conference. So we already transitioned.
Not to mention just with the Suns real quick, I'm not sure if any of you heard yesterday, but there was an interview. It was their GM and DeAndre Ayton had an interview with Maria Taylor. And just hearing DeAndre Ayton talk and hearing I believe his name's I might botch this, but James Jones, I believe off the top of my head, it's something JJ.
Yeah,
but
Jones.
He's James Jones. All right. And they had an interview yesterday. Just the culture is getting so much better. Like they are so motivated to just carry that momentum into next season. Like DeAndre Ayton said, he is getting up earlier than he ever has to go work out, and he wants to help lead this team, and they're just extra motivated. You even see from ownership, like Robert Sarver and them over there in their ownership with Phoenix, they have been just, it's kind of like James Dolan. I know it doesn't get as much attention because this is Phoenix, that's New York, but they are kind of on the same level. But they're upgrading their arena. I know that doesn't really seem like a big thing, but it shows movement from ownership to be willing to, improve the team and actually spend some money on the team because he's kind of been cheap. And that has a big thing to do with the culture as well. So I think that's an underrated part of it because culture is so big. It's one of the most important aspects. And I see that changing for the better in Phoenix.
On a lighter note, before I get to Christian to start off this one, the Suns are getting some nice jerseys next season. Those are nice. The Valley ones are getting all black. The Valley jerseys, those are nice. So it's just another addition to what Aiden said about the culture change. They're getting new apparel. So I mean, go for it. And so Christian, I'm going to start off with you on this one. Which teams do you think should trade up in the NBA draft? I had the Phoenix Suns. What do you think? Which team should trade up?
Yeah, but quickly before I move on to a new team, we saw the Suns play fantastically well in the bubble, and they were this close. They were really close to making the playoffs. They were pretty much a Damian Lillard performance against the Brooklyn Nets away from being in that game to ultimately get in. So that was unfortunate for them, but they went undefeated, so that's remarkable. But one team, and I hope they do, and maybe they will, but they'll probably overpay, is the New York Knicks. I think they probably should go for a point guard, maybe a LaMelo Ball, a Killian Hayes. I think that's something they should be doing. Now, they'll probably end up being very poor with their decision, and they'll probably overpay for it. But the Knicks need a star. They have to get one now, and I think they have to trade up.
One team, now this hasn't really been talked about too much, but I believe I heard it on the Bill Simmons podcast, and it got me thinking because this is a team that really, they're in a tough spot right now. They've got a couple good pieces, but they don't really have that one guy that's going to take them to the next level. It's the Sacramento Kings. The Sacramento Kings, they've got De'Aaron Fox. They've got Buddy Hield. They've got Bogdan Bogdanovic. They've got Marvin Bagley. They have got assets. But which one of those guys is really going to make a major impact? And in terms of extreme playoff success, probably none of them. They probably won't make the playoffs with that core. So what I'm thinking is Golden State is looking to trade back. Golden State is looking to get some more depth. I think the Sacramento Kings should trade up to the second pick, and I think they should take Denny Avdija. I think if you pair De'Aaron Fox with Denny Avdija, I think that's a great pairing. They passed up on – I'm not comparing Denny Avdija to Luka Doncic in any way because I think those comparisons are absolutely ridiculous. But they passed up on a European sensation, and it just has not turned out well. And I don't think they should make the same mistake again. I think Denny Avdija is a franchise piece. I think he's going to be fantastic for whichever team that drafts him. I think Sacramento should definitely look to trade up. Golden State would get some more depth, and I think Sacramento just needs to get that guy. And I think while this draft is weak, I think Denny Avdija can be one of those franchise-changing players.
Before I get to Will here, that actually is a great idea, Thomas. So you think about it, they trade with Golden State. Golden State would ask for Marvin Bagley in that trade back, meaning that when they trade back, they can go get a guy like a Devin Vassell or an Aaron Nesmith who could fit into their system easily while they get a big man that they've been coveting. Marvin Bagley, I hope people remember that Marvin Bagley at Duke had so much potential. In his rookie year, he showed flashes of having so much potential. He's always going to be ridiculed for being drafted ahead of Luka Doncic, but that doesn't mean he can't be a good player in the NBA. He made all-rookie first team in his rookie year. I know that doesn't mean, like, oh, he's going to be a superstar. Not by any means, but he could provide value. And what they're looking for out of, like, a James Wiseman or a Onyeka Okongwu, they could probably get out of a Marvin Bagley for a much cheaper price.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And the thing is with Marvin Bagley is, like, it's not that he's been bad. He's just been hurt. I mean, in his rookie season, he put up great numbers. He put up all rookie first-team numbers in less than 25 minutes a game. They were not playing him. And in his second season, we saw major regression. We saw him go through injuries. We saw him struggle all year long. I still think he has a ton of potential. I absolutely loved Marvin Bagley coming out of Duke. He hasn't been as good as I thought he was, and I don't think he'll ever reach the level that I thought he was going to reach, but I still think he can be a great big man in this league.
Will.
Yeah, so I have a couple teams. Number one, I would say Detroit Pistons. They're a team inside the top 10. And really the deal is with the Pistons, they just need talent on this roster. I don't even care what position it is. Like, there's no one besides, I guess, Christian Wood, who I believe is also a free agent this year. So they may not even
Griffin and Derrick Rose.
Right, yeah. You just need talent on this roster. Like, Detroit and the other team are basically in kind of what I like to call an NBA purgatory, which means they're not bad enough to have to not have like terrible lottery odds and get like a top 3 pick, even though the Pistons did have pretty solid odds, but they fell to 7, I believe. But they're also nowhere close to good enough to be able to, make the playoffs, especially in the East. Them and my other team, which is the Orlando Magic, they're both in like NBA purgatory. They're just not good enough to contend, and they're not bad enough to be able to get like elite talent in the draft. So I see the Pistons as having a chance to trade up and just get a face of this franchise, just get a building block, period. Trade into the top 3. Maybe LaMelo Ball is there, or maybe Denny Avdija is there, just whoever. I don't even care. Like, to me, this isn't even about fit with the Detroit Pistons. Just draft the best available player. You can draft the best available player at 7, or you could trade up. I think either way, that's a good thing for the Pistons. Just get talent on the roster, period. But to address my other team, the Orlando Magic, like I said, this is a little bit similar to the Kings in that they have some pieces, and they've obviously been a playoff team in the East. And I can honestly see the Orlando Magic trading up just because these pieces are not going to help you. Like Nikola Vucevic and some of these pieces are not going to help you really do much of anything. So trading a few of these pieces away to a Golden State, obviously Golden State would probably be looking for, I suppose, Mo Bamba would be cool for them. I mean, it's a rim protector, and, Golden State, really all they need to contend is a rim protecting big. So maybe they could get the best out of Mo Bamba because he's obviously been pretty much a bust so far. Or also possibly Nikola Vucevic. That would be really interesting if the Orlando Magic traded away Nikola Vucevic for the 2nd overall pick. I don't necessarily see that happening, but I honestly think that the Magic should definitely consider trading up and just getting out of NBA purgatory and just straight up throwing away some of these pieces and really restarting. They do obviously have pieces, but trading some of the guys that you don't think are going to help you long-term away, and then rebuilding with some of the pieces that you have I think honestly that could start with trading up and getting more of an elite talent in the draft.
So I don't really think the Orlando Magic are an NBA purgatory. I just think they're idiots. They have great talent on the roster. It's just they don't know how to properly develop
part
that
of it.
talent. Mo Bamba, why would they draft Mo Bamba at number 5 or 6 overall, but then keep him behind Nikola Vucevic, barely play him? I don't think Mo Bamba is a bust by any means. It's just the Orlando Magic have done a poor job, a horrendous job at developing him. They haven't given him any type of minutes, which he deserves, which other players in his draft class have gotten. And I think they have great young pieces. I don't think Markelle Fultz is a franchise point guard in this league. I just don't believe that, especially with everything he's been through. I love Jonathan Isaac. He's one of my favorite young players in the NBA. But in terms of the Orlando Magic, I don't really think they're stuck in purgatory. It's just the fact of the matter is they're just killing themselves. They have the young talent to go far. I'm not sure how far they can go. Probably a second-round exit with everything lining up the way they can, adding more pieces, getting rid of the guys they don't really need. That could be their ceiling once everyone develops, but I don't really think they're stuck in purgatory. I just think they're killing themselves.
I mean, hey, in game 1 of the NBA playoffs, they're unstoppable. They'll beat the Bucks. They beat the Raptors. You cannot beat game 1 Orlando Magic in the first round of the playoffs. But
And
honestly, I think that's even more reason for them to possibly start over.
DJ Augustine is in the GOAT debate for game 1s.
Honestly.
But we're going to move on to another note. We're going to get to our top 5 centers in the NBA. So I'm going to start off with our guest, Aiden, on this one. Who are your top 5 centers in the NBA? And give me a reasoning as to why you rank each center where they're ranked.
All right. First, I'm going to go with Nikola Jokic here. I thought it was close between Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic for a while. And no disrespect to Joel Embiid, but I think Nikola Jokic kind of sealed that debate, at least for now, with his playoff performance. And then at number 2, I'm going to go with Joel Embiid. You know, people can say what they want to say about him. He's obviously elite, at least talent-wise. And I know that he's still, got to work on leading a team, quote unquote. But I think that's the case with a lot of the centers. It's very rare to see a center leading a team unless you are Nikola Jokic, which is why he's at number 1. Number 3, I'm going to go with Karl Anthony Towns. I know he's not a great defender, but offensively, he's just, I'm going to say this, obviously it's a bit of a stretch, but he's like a juggernaut. I mean, he's so good offensively. He can shoot the ball. He can score inside. He's just a menace on offense, especially scoring the basketball, and he grabs rebounds as well. Again, I know he's soft. I get that, but he's such a good scorer. It's insane.
And I don't mean to interrupt you. I don't mean to interrupt you here. I don't think it's a stretch at all to call him a juggernaut. It's just people won't know because he plays on the Minnesota Timberwolves. People don't really watch the Timberwolves, but he's an offensive juggernaut.
And then at number 4, I'm going to go ahead and go with Rudy Gobert here. Rudy Gobert, he's just it's just when you look at him, I know that his offensive skill set is super limited. Like he's just basically limited to dunking the basketball. I get that, but you look at the rebounds, mostly due to his height, but still, he's a great rebounder. It doesn't matter. And he grabs down. He's always at the top of the NBA, not standings, but stats when it comes to rebounds per game. He's so productive on the boards. He's the best rim protector in the NBA. He's such an elite defender. And you look at, there's a lot of teams in the NBA that could use a guy like Rudy Gobert. You even look at a team like the Warriors. I'm not saying they're going to trade for Rudy Gobert. I'm just saying that Mitch over Cat. Sorry, that just caught my eye. But again, Rudy Gobert, his ability to protect the rim, it's elite. You look at some guys like a Mitchell Robinson. We'll just bring him up for a second. I'm not saying he's a bad rim protector, but he's one of those guys that his blocks don't reflect his. I think he goes for blocks a lot, and some people think blocks equal rim protection, and I don't really think that's the case with Mitchell Robinson. I still think he's a good rim protector. Don't get me wrong, obviously, but Rudy Gobert, I mean, he doesn't overcommit just for blocks. He still gets blocks, but he's just a great rim protector. And at number 5, I honestly don't know. I think there's just, after you get off with Rudy Gobert, I think there's a lot of guys who aren't too far behind. But they're just a
Bam.
Okay, yeah, Bam Adebayo. All right, yes, Bam Adebayo. Sorry, there was just a lot of people that run through my mind. I'm going to be completely honest. I forgot totally about Bam Adebayo, which is sad to say because he just put up an incredible performance in the playoffs. Not performances. This dude, I mean, he can do basically everything on the court. He can score the basketball. He can play defense. He can rebound. Bam Adebayo, I know I just forgot about him, but he is so good. In the Miami Heat, I know that Jimmy Butler he's the lead horse on that team, but even he said it. Bam Adebayo is the X factor for them. He is their most important player. He brings so much to the table for the Miami Heat. Again, I know I just forgot about him, but he is so valuable.
Yeah, so basically this is going to be a 1A and a 1B because I think they're super close. I think you can go either direction. For my 1A, it's going to be Nikola Jokic, and my 1B is going to be Joel Embiid. It depends what you want to go with. Do you want to go with the offensive juggernaut, who you can effectively run an offense through, and he put up dominant performances time and time again in the playoffs? Go with Nikola Jokic. If you want the two-way stud who also puts up numbers in the playoffs, he put up like 30 and 12 on the Celtics, go with Joel Embiid. I would personally take Nikola Jokic, personal preference. I think his total offensive impact overshadows Joel Embiid's two-way play. At number 3, I've also got Karl Anthony Towns. His defense is poor. It's really poor, but offensively, what can't he do? He can shoot. He can score. He can attack the basket. He's an underrated playmaker. He can do it all offensively for a big man. And I think that once we see a team around Karl Anthony Towns, we're going to start to appreciate him more. And number 4, I've got Bam Adebayo. Look at what he did in the playoffs. I'm sorry to tell everybody the truth, but from rounds 1 to 3, he was the best player on that Miami Heat team, not Jimmy Butler. It was Bam Adebayo. It was the guy who was anchoring their defense, the guy who was bringing the ball up on offense. He can do everything. He can score around the rim. He can rebound. He's a great passer for a big man. And in the playoffs, we saw a much, much improved mid-range jumper. I don't know if this is going to translate to a three-point shot later, but the signs are all there. And number 5, I'm going to go with Rudy Gobert. I think I would put Bam over Rudy Gobert because I think Bam is the more versatile player offensively and defensively. Rudy Gobert is a great rim protector, but Nikola Jokic, night in, night out, cooked him, dominated him, took him to school. And I think in the playoffs, his impact kind of goes down. I don't think he's as good of a defender in the playoffs as he is in the regular season, which is fine. He's still a top 5 center. He's still one of the best defenders of all time, really. Like, we need to start having that conversation. Rudy Gobert is one of the best defenders of all time. But I would take Bam Adebayo over him for his offensive versatility, defensive versatility, and I think after what Bam did in these playoffs, he's just an absolute animal.
Before I get to Will here, we're going to break some news real quick. I just want some 30-second thoughts on this. The NBA and NBPA are extending today's deadline to November 6th for either side to serve notice on terminating the collective bargaining agreement. So,
I mean, what does that mean?
I mean, it's a bit.
I heard I don't know exactly, but I heard Malcolm Brogdon or Danny Green talking about it yesterday. One of the two. Forget.
Mm-hmm. So
I don't know exactly what it means, though.
Their finances and how much they're going to make moving forward to next season.
Yeah, it's probably just because of obviously COVID reasons. It obviously impacts so much of the NBA's financials. So they obviously want to make a plan for that. It's probably a decision in this.
So I'm going to get to Will on the other topic. Who are your 5 centers in the NBA?
Yeah, so my 5 centers are literally the exact same as Thomas. I mean, that's just the way I wrote it down. Seriously, we did not text each other. I did not copy off his notes, I promise. But I can give a little bit of a different reasoning. To me, Jokic, I've had Jokic over Embiid really since last season, honestly. And to me, it just cemented Jokic at 1 and Embiid at 2. And honestly, when raw talent, sure, you could make the case that Embiid might be slightly better because he's one of the best, rim protecting bigs in the entire, and really one of the best defenders, period, in the league when it comes to, in the post specifically. And Jokic is still really not that good of a defender at all. I mean, he's not a complete liability like he was a couple of years ago. He's improved a little bit, but it's still not anywhere close to Embiid. But like we've mentioned, Jokic's offensive impact is just so great because of his playmaking, because you can run the offense through him. And he just steps up in the playoffs. And I know Embiid played really well in the 4 games. Granted, he was kind of supposed to because he was going up against Daniel Tice. But hey, he did what he was supposed to do. But Jokic just round after round proved to be the man. I mean, game 7s when the money's on the line, Jokic, he's honestly one of the clutchest players in the league. When you look at the advanced statistics, he's delivers in the clutch every time. The eye test tells you he delivers in the clutch. And even in the Western Conference Finals against a really tough matchup in Anthony Davis, he still performed pretty well statistically. Obviously, it wasn't enough to overcome Anthony Davis and LeBron James, but he still held his own and played fairly excellent in that series and just in the playoffs overall. So I really have to give Jokic the edge just because of his playoff success and what he's been able to do. Obviously, leading, him and Jamal Murray leading that 3-1 comeback against the Clippers team that so many thought was the championship favorite was obviously incredible. So I just have to give Jokic the advantage there. Yeah, a lot of people thought, but in reality, they weren't. But Embiid, to me, is clearly number 2. I have to put him over Towns just because of the two-way impact. I mean, Embiid's the best defensive player on this top 5 list. And offensively, he's still great.
He's a better defender than Rudy Gobert?
Oh, sorry. No, second best defender. He's still obviously a world's better than Karl Anthony Towns is really my point.
Oh, okay.
Puts him over Karl Anthony Towns for me. And honestly, Aiden, offensive juggernaut, that was the exact terminology that I was going to use. Like when I was thinking in my head, how do I describe Karl Anthony Towns as an offensive player? He is straight up a juggernaut in the post. And I mean, his 3-point percentage went up massively. He is a much better shooter now.
He's a much efficient shooting big man.
Right, exactly. He's incredibly efficient year shooting the basketball, and it's pretty good volume-wise as well. And then at number 4, I do have Bam. Number 5, Gobert. To me, his performances in the playoffs was really nothing short of incredible. I mean, like you said, he's really possibly the most impactful player over the course of the playoffs for the Miami Heat. That's a Miami Heat team that went to the NBA Finals and exceeded all expectations. And he was easily the best player in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Celtics. I mean, that wasn't even really without question. He was dominating the Boston Celtics really in every single game he played in. Whereas you look at Rudy Gobert, and he's just, besides obviously his rim protection is unmatched, possibly in NBA history, maybe one of the best rim protecting big men, probably the best rim, except for maybe Hakeem Olajuwon of all time. He's definitely in that conversation. That's how good he is. But besides rim protection and rebounding, he's just not doing too much. I know he can score, like 16, 17 points per game, but a lot of that I feel like is due to his size and just, his ability to catch lobs, obviously. He's a really good finisher because he's like over 7 feet tall. But just as an offensive skill set, he's not offering that much, especially when it comes to Bam Adebayo's impact as a passer as well. I mean, Bam Adebayo is an excellent passer, especially for being a big man. And Bam Adebayo has a better offensive skill set than Rudy Gobert. So I give Bam the advantage because of the playoff and just because as an all-around player, I think he's better right now than Gobert. And then Gobert, to me, I mean, you look at everyone else on the list that I could pick from, like Nikola Vucevic, DeAndre Ayton, they're not better than Rudy Gobert. It's because of that defensive impact. It obviously counts for something.
Before I get to Christian, I want you to highlight Jalen's comment in the comment section. Rudy Gobert, he's a great rim protector, but he doesn't come close to the guys he just mentioned. Not anywhere near as close to the Bill Russells, the Ben Wallaces, the Tim Duncans, even the Kevin Garnetts. I mean, he's a great rim protector, but on the all-time list, I'm not really sure he has that much stock in comparison to those guys. But Christian, how about you?
Yeah, so I actually have the same list as Thomas and Will. We all none of us talked about it. So, but just to explain myself, obviously Nikola Jokic had a really, really good postseason, and he showed it. And while they didn't get past the Lakers throughout the entire series against the Clippers and as well as the Jazz, he was really dominant. While Jamal Murray had his awesome performances, which he uplifted his game, Jokic did everything he's done, especially throughout the regular season, and he just did it and showed it again. And I think that Joel Embiid is not so far off like as an extreme, but Joel Embiid is still number 2. His two-way ability is just sensational. If he can finally get into a good situation and hopefully, like Aiden mentioned before, this team can finally get shooting that can help this team maybe be a better team in the East, I think we could see even more from him. But Joel Embiid's clearly the second best center. Karl Anthony Towns, you've all said it. He's an offensive juggernaut. He's got so much he can do offensively. While defensively, he's not the greatest, and he's shown really a lot of weakness. His offensive ability is just way too much to not have him at 3. And then between Bam and Rudy, I have the same standpoint. I think Rudy Gobert has a lack of ability to take over the game offensively. He really just dunks the ball and has stuff that's in front of the rim, really. And while he's a very, very good defender, I think Bam's versatility and his ability to play make and do everything that he did in the playoffs for the Miami Heat puts him at 4 for me.
So I pretty much have the same list as both of you, and it's hard to really debate this one because there's just really like as clear and cut order. So I have Nikola Jokic and Joel Embiid as my 1A and 1B, as Thomas does as well. I think it's actually super close. You can go either way. I'm not going to penalize Joel Embiid for not going far in the playoffs this year because you saw that he didn't really have much. And Nikola Jokic is also faced in a better situation than Joel Embiid is. Joel Embiid doesn't have much floor spacing on his team. He also doesn't have as much room to operate in the post. Nikola Jokic is surrounded by guys who could create their own shot. Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr. He has guys that can create shots, get buckets. So it's a little bit easier on him. But I'm going to go with Nikola Jokic as the very slight edge here, just because of his playoff success and his playoff impact. In the regular season, both of their impact, when you factor in Nikola Jokic, who's the best offensive big man in the NBA, and with Joel Embiid's two-way dominance, both of them are identical in terms of impact. But in the playoffs, it really goes to another level. I think Nikola Jokic has shown in the past couple of years that in the playoffs, he just takes it to another notch that we haven't really seen. Embiid has been good in the playoffs, but we haven't really seen him go to the level Nikola Jokic has in the playoffs. So that's why I'm going to give Jokic the slight edge over Embiid. Embiid and Towns, in my opinion, shouldn't even be debatable. I think Embiid is much better than Karl Anthony Towns. It's not really close. His two-way impact is better than what Karl Anthony Towns brings just offensively. And Karl Anthony Towns, he's a much better offensive player than Joel Embiid. But the fact of the matter is he's an atrocious defender at the center position. So, and especially at the center position, when you don't have rim protection for a big man, that's going to be valuable. So I have to put Karl Anthony Towns behind Joel Embiid. It's just the way it is. In terms of Karl Anthony Towns, you could debate this 3 through 5. I think the top 2 are pretty clear cut. With 3 through 5, you can debate it, but I have the same order as you guys. I have Karl Anthony Towns at number 3. Just like you guys have been saying, he's an offensive juggernaut. He could score at all 3 levels and extremely efficiently. He's one of the most efficient scoring big men of all time, like I've alluded to multiple times. And he's also one of the better playmakers at the center position as well. His offensive impact, even though he's a defensive liability, is greater than what the other 2 bring on just defense or on two-way ability. So I have to put Cat at 3. I know people will knock him for not having much playoff success or not winning as much, but he's in a terrible situation in Minnesota. And the 1 year he did before Jimmy Butler got hurt, the Timberwolves were the 3 seed, and I know he did get outplayed by Clint Capella, but I think just looking at a 5-game sample size is kind of unfair to Karl Anthony Towns. So I have Cat at 3. I do have Bam at 4. So before the playoffs, I had Rudy Gobert ahead of Bam, but what Bam did in the playoffs was absolutely sensational. He was injured in the finals. I'm not going to penalize him for the last couple of games in the finals. He was clearly banged up. But before that, he was easily, not even debatably, he was easily the best player on that Heat team performance-wise. Jimmy Butler is a better player, but performance-wise, Bam was definitely outplaying him on both offense and defense. His playmaking was exceptional. His scoring was exceptional. He was getting whatever he wanted against the Celtics. I know Aiden, as a Celtics fan, can attest to that. Bam Adebayo was giving the Celtics big men nightmares. He was doing it against Giannis Antetokounmpo and Brook Lopez, 2 of the league's better defenders. And so offensively, he's even developing an offensive scoring game as well as his playmaking. And defensively, you know what the deal is with Bam Adebayo. He was an all-defensive second-team player this year. He has one of the best defensive impacts among young ascending star big men. So I have to rank him at number 4 because of what he did in the playoffs compared to what Rudy did. And I have Rudy at number 5. His rim protection is just that lethal, and I think I hate to do it. If you have to rank someone at 5, it's not that it's a knock on him. I just think there's 4 centers better than him right now. But we're going to get to our final topic of the show tonight, and That is our top 5 draft prospects and 1 sleeper prospect. So I'm going to start with Mr. Will Laughlin on this one. Who are your top 5 draft prospects and why? And what is 1 sleeper prospect which you think a team in the lottery or outside the lottery should target?
All right. I'm gonna start at number 1. And my number 1 is LaMelo Ball. And to me, I'm not sure why this is too much of a conversation with Anthony Edwards or even really any other guys. LaMelo Ball, from what I've seen, is to me not maybe necessarily clear cut, but it's relatively clear that he's the best player. I think he has the highest ceiling of any prospect in the draft. And to me, he's just the best offensive player, really due to his elite playmaking. And that's obviously his best attribute as a player. And he obviously is still a great shot creator as well, just overall. I mean, he's physically gifted. He's physically gifted, being so tall that he is. And he has the tools just based off his pure size alone, that if he gets some development on the defensive side, just because of his size, he should, in theory, be able to guard. Obviously, when you watch the tape, defensively, not really his strong suit. In theory, with some right development, he could probably improve, I think. But offensively, he's just such a mismatch because of how tall he is. As I mentioned before, I think he has the highest ceiling out of any prospect. Another thing, intangible-wise, just his confidence. I mean, he misses like 8 straight threes in a row, and he's still going to pull up from like 30 feet and attempt that 9th three, which I know you could say is a little bit of a negative, but it's just the confidence to even do that is honestly good for any really player, especially coming out of the draft. And he's also his experience professionally, I think, will also help him compared to some other guys, who are in college. My number 2, honestly, this is pretty close, but I had Denny Avdija at number 2. Him and Anthony Edwards is my number 3. I was honest, I didn't know which one I was going to pick, but I have Denny Avdija at 2. And to me, he has every tool that a player needs to have to be one of the best playmakers, really, in the NBA. I honestly think that's his ceiling, being one of the best playmakers in the NBA, especially at his position, at the wing position. His ability to play make is just incredible. He has all the tools. The passing skills, just the raw ability to pass the ball in many different situations. He has the IQ, and just the combination of his instincts and his feel for the game, and just his raw passing ability is extremely impressive, especially at him being like a 6'9" small forward. And to me, he already has some next level moves. I would say with his handle, he's a very crafty player, and it's kind of a similar way that Luka Doncic is a crafty player. I'm not saying he's going to be Luka at all, but I'm just saying the way he's able to handle and some of the moves look a little bit kind of like Luka in a way. I think the key with Denny, though, is really hopefully he can bulk up a little bit. Physically he's not – he can have – maybe defensively he could have some struggles against bigger wings and forwards even on the defensive side. His lateral quickness isn't exactly as great as you'd like to be. So really just his defense in general isn't exactly – up to par, but he could definitely improve, especially if he gets a little bit more muscle. Also, I didn't mention this, but he's really good. He's obviously a very versatile piece, but he's also pretty good off ball. Like, he's a pretty good off ball mover as well. So I like him there. He's my number 2. And like, Thomas and Aiden have said so much on social media, the Warriors, if you're going to make a pick, please draft Denny Avdija. He's clearly the guy to me. My number 3, Anthony Edwards. To me, the thing that really stands out with him is obviously his ability to drive the ball and finish, but really it's his elite physical profile with his size. He's a pretty strong guy as well, but also his athleticism. So the combination of that is pretty deadly. And obviously he's excellent at driving the ball and finishing through contact. His footwork's pretty balanced, especially when he's driving. And that really has to do with he has a pretty strong lower body and upper body. So he's just a strong overall player. And I think he has the potential to be a solid shooter. He's a little bit streaky in that way, but I think he can definitely develop into be a solid shooter. And the defensive potential is there. To me, it's just purely effort with Anthony Edwards. If he puts effort into defense, he can be a more than capable defender on that end. And also shot selection. His shot selection offensively, it can be erratic at some points. So I would say that, to me, knocks him down. I don't think he's of the caliber of LaMelo Ball, even though a lot of people seem to think he is, or even above LaMelo Ball. I don't really understand that, in my opinion, but that's my top 3. Number 4, this is a guy that Onyeka Okongwu falls to number 9 to the Wizards, I'm going to be ecstatic as a Wizards fan. Absolutely ecstatic. But to me, I think defensively, he's one of the best overall defenders in the class, period. I mean, he's extremely – like defense he's got it all on defense. The rim protection, he's a really good shot blocker. He can guard pretty well in space, and he can guard, multiple positions as well, which is very impressive considering his size. I mean, he's 6'9", 6'10". I think offensively, he has a high motor. He definitely needs to improve his just overall post work and really just scoring profile as a player. But to me, all the tools are there defensively, especially to be a pick and roll big man. He's going to be a great pick and roll, just a big man in the pick and roll. And especially if he can develop a jump shot with a pick and pop, that's going to be really dangerous and very useful. It's really to any team that drafts him. Number 5 is James Wiseman. Him and Onyeka, I thought it was pretty close, but I have to give Onyeka the edge. So James Wiseman, a lot of people have him penciled in necessarily to the Warriors. I don't really see that. But to me, his athleticism and size combination is obviously off the charts. That's obviously, everyone knows that. But he's also a really terrific rebounder, and he's going to excel at rim protection. Defensively, really rim protection is what he's going to bring because his defensive awareness can get lost sometimes. And I think he runs the floor very well in transition for his size. I mean, he's 7'1", and he runs the floor very well in transition. His shooting-wise, his form is pretty good. Obviously, his percentages aren't great, and he doesn't really shoot that much at all. But his mid-range is decent. So he has some tools to hopefully develop a jump shot at that position. His touch around the rim is solid from what I've seen. The key for me to him is really polished his post work up and defensive awareness. And then my sleeper pick is going to be Kira Lewis Jr. This is a guy that I do not understand why he is not in the top 10. I mean, he's a top 10 prospect to me. Obviously, the thing that you notice with him is obviously his blazing speed. He is as quick as they get. Inside, and he can really just do it. His strengths are he's a really good playmaker. He's a very underrated playmaker. He's a great inside scorer. He has shooting potential, and really his motor. He's such an aggressive driver of the basketball, and at that speed, a lot of guys with blazing speed out of college, they don't really necessarily know how to control their pace and their direction, but he does. So coming out of the draft, the ability to already be able to change your pace as an offensive player, being as fast as he is, that's going to be a very useful skill that he already has coming out of the draft. So that's really what the thing I noticed most about him. In terms of his other skills, I would say he's a solid shooter, 3-point shooter off dribble. Catch and shoot, I mean, he's a point guard, so he's not necessarily catching and shooting, isn't really his role. But off-ball shooting is cool. And in fact, he actually did shoot above 40% when it comes to catch and shoot threes. So that's pretty impressive as well. But like I said, he's an underrated playmaker, and really his strengths are he's a good playmaker.
Okay, Will, I have to stop you there. We'll have to stop you there. You have not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 guys ahead of Killian Hayes. 5 guys.
Yeah,
Killian Hayes
is my number 6.
Thank you.
Killian Hayes is number 6.
Why is he behind 5 guys in this draft? Maybe 1 I can accept. Maybe 2, maybe even 3 guys I can accept him being behind. But 5, no.
Look, there's not too much of a gap between like 4 through 6 or really 4 through 7. There's not too big of a gap there. Like, I really like Killian Hayes, but to me, I think going to my negatives for Killian Hayes, it would be it's a little bit. Obviously, he's a left-hand guy. He's a little bit too dominant on that left-hand side, and shooting-wise, scoring-wise, he is a little bit streaky. So those are kind of my negatives for Killian Hayes. I mean, Killian Hayes.
Can we say that about Anthony Edwards as well? Can't we say that about Anthony Edwards?
So that makes him not a top 5 prospect.
He's number 6 to me, guys. All right, there's not like that.
James Wiseman. Why is James Wiseman number 5 if he had a 3-game sample size in college? I just want to know how you're coming at this from. You have James Wiseman at number 5 ahead of Killian Hayes after 3 games playing at Memphis against Oregon, some random college, and then someone else. Like Oregon was his best matchup, and they didn't even have a dominant big like a Bull this year. So I want to know why James Wiseman is ahead of Killian Hayes.
He doesn't need college.
What impressed you in that 3-game sample size to put him ahead of Killian Hayes, who played against grown men?
All right, I don't need a 3-game sample size. Who cares? I see what James Wiseman can do on the basketball court, and I really like James Wiseman. It's not that big of a gap to me. I mean, look, maybe if I watch a little bit more film, I'll come around and say Killian Hayes is top 5. He's number 6. That's not that big of a gap, and I've already said the gap between 3 through 6 is not that big. It's pretty close between all these guys. But to me, James Wiseman, you just know what you're going to get out of him. Like, to me, I don't want to go over what I said already about James Wiseman, but
do we know what we're going to get? Do we know what we're going to get? He's the most mysterious prospect.
At the very worst, like, he's gonna be a good rim protector. He's gonna be a guy that can just, alley oops, lobs. He's gonna be a dunker. So at the very worst, he's like, I don't know, a Clint Capella. So I think I see what Will is saying. What you're gonna get off of that. Now it's gonna see how
high ceiling, low floor, or I wouldn't say low floor.
Not low floor. Not low floor.
I would go high ceiling, high floor. High ceiling.
Yeah.
floor.
The ceiling's pretty high, and also the floor is pretty high to me. With Killian Hayes, the floor. I mean, the ceiling is higher. I would say for Killian Hayes than James Wiseman for sure, especially being a guard in a guard-driven league, for crying out loud. But the floor could be a little bit low to me.
Before Thomas continues, so I get the guard to center comparison, and it's a hard one. But in terms of Anthony Edwards and Killian Hayes, I get having LaMelo, but why would you take Anthony Edwards over Killian Hayes? I just want you to elaborate on that a little bit.
Anthony Edwards over Killian Hayes. Yes, I have Edwards at 3, Killian Hayes at 6. I mean, I said it before, 3 through 6, not huge difference. But to me, Edwards, I think just has – if Edwards is developed in the right way with his shooting potential – I mean, obviously you could say Killian Hayes right now is probably a better shooter, but if Anthony Edwards is developed – he's still going to be a pretty good shooter, in my opinion. And overall, as a scorer, he'll still be really good if he's developed. But also, it's really the defense. To me, he just has more defensive tools. And if he puts in the effort, and development will do that. I mean, with good development, guys' effort improves on defense. And that's a huge thing in today's league, especially. If you put in the effort defensively, you can still be a solid defender, even if you lack some of those physical tools. And he has the physical tools. And when he's engaged, he can lock up defensively. So it's just about the effort. So it's the defensive impact that he could have while also having that really very significant offensive impact that I don't think is too far off of what Killian Hayes is, even though Killian Hayes is a far better playmaker than Anthony Edwards.
Yeah, I could see where you're coming from with the defense. I think right now at this moment, they're probably pretty similar, but I could see Edwards becoming a better defender than Hayes because right now the biggest problem with Edwards is his motor. I mean, that's the biggest question with him. Is he going to give it all in every possession, or is he not? That's just a simple question with Edwards. But I think offensively, Hayes is just far better than Edwards as a playmaker, as a shooter, maybe even as a scorer as well, just with his versatility.
Yep.
I think I would just say Killian Hayes is offensive.
He's even a better defender right now. I know Edwards' ceiling's higher defensively, but
yeah. But I'm gonna get to Aiden right here.
All right. So for me, this at number 1. Speaking of Killian Hayes, I have him at number 1. Now, I know he doesn't have the highest ceiling in the draft, but I still think he has one of the highest ceilings, and he's just such a complete player. Now, I'm not as high on him as I was when I first watched him, but I still love Killian Hayes. We've kind of already talked about it, but he is a very complete player. He's only 19 years old. He's playing against grown men. I know his three-point percentage was only 29%, but I have confidence because his ability to create separation is not 29%, but it was low. He shot a low percentage.
It was 39% on 4 attempts a game in the EuroLeague.
Okay, well, I was at 29%, 30, so that's my bad. But it was in the 30s. I don't know why I said 29, 39. But his three-point percentage was a little streaky. His three-point shot was a little streaky, but I still have complete confidence because when you watch Killian Hayes, his ability to create his own shot is great. He shot, Thomas, you can elaborate this for me, 85% from the free throw line?
I believe in that particular season he shot 91%, if not
91%. All right, 91%. I think it was 85 the season before, but it was in the 80s the season before, and then 91%, which is phenomenal. And Thomas is the one that told this to me. And it's his free throw percentage in touch around the basket is a great indicator to how they'll turn out as a shooter. Killian Hayes, 91% from the free throw line, and he's got a nice touch around the basket. And those separation moves, again, I know he's a streaky shooter, but he's already a solid one. I see Killian Hayes having a lot of success. I know driving to the hoop, he's got to become a better finisher. But even if he's never an elite finisher because he lacks that explosiveness, he does not use his right hand, you're still getting a great three-point shooter who can separate his own, create his own shot. And you're getting a great playmaker and a capable defender at very least. I think, when you look at Killian Hayes, he'll never be on the all-defensive team. But at very least, you're getting a capable defender with, at his ceiling, that's going to be an asset for him. And I think it's going to be an asset in the league. But at very worst, you're getting just a capable defender. There's not many holes in his game. And I know we can say that about prospects like Desmond Bane, but we're not going to put him, this high in the list. But Killian Hayes doesn't have many holes in his game, yet he still has a very high ceiling. And these positives of his are strong positives.
Before you continue, Christian, Sean, Jalen, all the Knicks fans, I'm so sorry that your new jerseys have been unveiled. This is just, I don't know what this is. It looks like something I see at the Hot Topic store.
I don't want to talk about it.
I'm so sorry that your franchise is like this. You have to suffer. You can't even get good jersey designs. Just praying for you.
Yep.
Oh, man. Yeah, but at number 2, I've got LaMelo Ball. I just want to talk about this first. So I've talked about it once. I'm going to keep pushing this out there. Do not panic about LaMelo Ball's struggles in these pre-draft workouts and interviews. A lot of people have been talking about how in these pre-draft workouts he struggled, and how in the interviews he doesn't seem like he's really into it as much. But I don't buy into that too much. Now, although I do think it's noteworthy, LaMelo Ball is at his best when he's with his teammates, when he's playing 5-on-5 basketball. From a character standpoint, which is all what these interviews are about. From a character standpoint, he is at his highest when he's in a comfortable setting. He's in that team setting around his teammates. And in these interviews, it's just him and the coach. Again, this is noteworthy stuff, but I'm not panicking over here. And then in the workouts, this is just shooting. It's mostly just shooting drills. And we all know LaMelo Ball, the shot's not that great. Now, obviously, again, this is why it's noteworthy. His shot really, it's struggling still.
It wasn't even the workouts either. He didn't do any work. It was just interviews.
No, he did. He has done a couple
workouts. He expects to go number 1.
He did. No, but from what I've heard is that he sent in some tapes. Again, I'm not an insider here, but from the reports that I've heard, I saw it was he was on the Charlotte radio, and he said that he struggled in some workouts. Now, not with teams, but he's just kind of done some like video stuff, I guess. I'm not an insider, but again, when we talk about these workouts, this is just one-on-one stuff. This is his mostly just shooting, not even one-on-one, 1v0, like we saw on the pro day yesterday with Tyrese Maxey and Anthony Edwards. He's at his best when he's able to have that playmaking, utilize his playmaking because he's got teammates around him. So that's why I'm not panicking with this stuff. And again, the interviews was the main part because that's actually what he's been doing. His character truly comes out when he's around his teammates in that team setting. But LaMelo Ball, he just has such a high ceiling. His shot is worrisome, but he's just such a good playmaker. He has the size. He has the defensive tools. And I know a lot of people feel like he draws some comparisons to Anthony Edwards in the fact that their motors are questionable. They have the defensive tools, but right now we're negative defenders. I get all that, but I do believe LaMelo Ball is over Anthony Edwards. And a lot of that has to do with, I also look at this with LaMelo Ball. We look at Lonzo Ball. Now, Lonzo coming into college, coming into the NBA, he really started to grow into his own and get a higher motor once he was separated from LeVar Ball. And I think that'll be the similar effect with LaMelo Ball. And I think his motor will slowly but surely improve once he kind of separates himself from his father. I know that sounds like a cliche thing to say, but it's true. I mean, you just look at Lonzo. But yeah, again, with LaMelo Ball, I'm taking him over Anthony Edwards. In fact, by a good amount, because at number 3, I have Denny Avdia, excuse me. Again, this guy, the Luka Doncic comparisons are insane. They don't really make much sense to me, but he does have to improve his ball handling it a little bit if he wants to run an offense, but the potential is certainly there, and the floor is there to at least be a secondary ball handler, and the ceiling's there to run an offense. He's a great playmaker. He's a good team defender. I think he's got to get stronger if he really wants to round out his game, and his three-point shot is very worrisome to me. But with that being said, I still think he can be a very successful pro, potentially franchise-changing player. Even if the jump shot's not there, he's got the playmaking. He's a good team defender. I know on 1v1, if he gets like a bigger guy on him in the post, he's kind of going to struggle to do that. A lack of strength, but Denny Avdija, just the potential's there. He heated up at the end of the season at Maccabi Tel Aviv, and that was against grown men as well over in the EuroLeague. So Denny Avdija, again, similar to LaMelo Ball in the sense that they just have a lot of potential. Now, I think Avdija's floor is a little higher than Ball's. Ball is a very low floor, but I'm going Avdija at number 3, and this is when it gets very controversial. I'm taking Tyrell Terry at number 4. I know people hate this, but I see him being he's going to be a very good point guard in the league.
I respect it.
And I know that he's one of the most slept on players in this draft. I know defensively, not really ever going to be an asset for him. He's going to play good defense, but he's always going to be targeted due to his size. Offensively, though, just as a scorer, man, I don't know. I just see it with him. His three-point shot is magnificent. I love his form on the ball or off the ball because he moves off the ball really well. I mean, he makes Steph Curry not look bad, but he makes, Steph Curry would be proud of him if you really sat down and watched him move off the basketball. He has such a high IQ, such a great work ethic, and they talked about it over this whole quarantine. They told him, you need to gain some weight. He knew he did. He had to get stronger. Come in 4 to 5 days a week, and we can work on your strength training. He came in every day for the past 6 months and gained, what was it, Thomas? How many pounds did he gain?
20 pounds.
20 pounds. And he actually grew an inch and a half as well, if I'm not mistaken. He's gotten bigger. It's going to help him defensively. It's going to help him driving to the hoop. That's going to untap some of his playmaking potential. And to go off the playmaking, he's a better playmaker than just 3 assists. The 3 assists per game were mostly due to the system he was in. The assists were evenly distributed due to the system he was playing in. He is a better playmaker than 3 assists would suggest. And Tyrell Terry, I know that you're sitting here saying, outside of his scoring, there's no real elite trait, but that's enough for him to end up being one of the best players in the draft. I just see it with him. And then at number 5, I'm going with Tyrese Halliburton. My big board changes on a daily, and I don't have Anthony Edwards. I actually have him at 6. But Tyrese Halliburton, he just does it all. He makes those winning plays. He does the little things. Great playmaker. I know his three-point shot, the form is, let's just say, unique. It's different, but it goes in, right? It goes in, and I see his floor at least being a capable three-point shooter. And obviously defensively, this is why I think the Atlanta Hawks are going to take him, because he's so pro-ready. Sure, his ceiling isn't as high as some of the other prospects, but I don't think it's that low, to be honest. I don't think it's as low as other people think, and his floor is so high. He is so NBA ready. And that's also why I have the Atlanta Hawks taking him at 6th overall. And then my sleeper for the draft. I have so many. When it comes to this draft, the top, it's weak. But there's a lot of guys that are going to be good NBA pros. You're going to get a lot of pros out of this class. It's a deep class. But I have a lot of sleepers, but I'm going with a guy who I believe is a lottery talent that may go undrafted, and that is Karim Minier at Avanier College, played in Canada. I just love this kid. I know the lack of competition. It's there. He played in Canada. But there really isn't a hole in his game. And he's got a fairly high ceiling. I'd say his ceiling is a Drew Holiday. Am I saying he's going to be Drew Holiday? No. But the ceiling is there. He is a great defender, first and foremost. He has a 7-foot wingspan, and he plays point guard. He stays engaged. He's got great lateral quickness, great footwork, moves his hips well, stays engaged. That's a big thing too, because some of these guys have the tools but don't utilize it. He utilizes it to the most. Offensively, his game's still a little unpolished because he just started playing basketball a couple years ago. I'd say a few years ago. And despite that, his work ethic's so high. He says, I have to work 3 times harder than everybody else because I started basketball so late, and he has done that. As a 3-point shooter, he's very streaky, but he knows that he knew that he had to improve his 3-point shot, and it jumped up by 20%, from 20% to 40% from season 4 to season 5. Now, I'm not saying he's ever going to be a 40% shooter, but he improved as a 3-point shooter, and the potential is there for him. He just needs more reps. That's like what happened with Pascal Siakam in the playoffs. He lacked the reps because he didn't practice over quarantine, and he shot like an abysmal 12% from distance. Griminier, he can get to the hoop. He's a creative finisher, and he's a very nice playmaker as well. Not LaMelo Ball vision, but he's a very nice playmaker. All around, just a really well-rounded game. He just needs to put on a little bit of weight and keep practicing, and I believe he will because his work ethic is off the charts, and he's dedicated to his craft. He's like a sponge. He'll just soak
I'm
up
gonna get
anything.
Christian saying his top 5 prospects. Christian, who are your top 5 guys? And
So I had a lot of the same guys that were mentioned before. I have LaMelo Ball at 1. I think his ability to do a lot of the things, and while he might not necessarily be ready to go right away, and we'll see some awful games at times in his rookie season, I think that his ceiling is going to be really high. I think he could really help some team, whoever takes him. If it's Minnesota, we'll see. But I think that's going to be my number 1 guy. Number 2, I have Denny. I watched a lot of film on him over break. I think his ability to play make, and he's got a lot of potential to do a lot of different things. I know we've all mentioned his ability to maybe go to Golden State. I love that. If he can do that for them and add to that all of that motion offense, I think that's a perfect fit for him. But there was also another couple teams I know we mentioned before, maybe Sacramento or a couple other teams. There's a lot of opportunity for him to find a good place, especially in this kind of an era where playmaking and motion offense and a lot of high scoring, it benefits him in that sense. Number 3, I have Killian Hayes. I think, and I hope the Knicks maybe move up. I doubt it, and who knows what happens, but he's a great point guard. I think he's going to help a lot. Whoever it goes to him, he'll help, and he's really polished right now at 19, and he played in a league where we've seen guys like Luka Doncic and all these European players really come into the league and be ready to go, especially those high top quality talents. So I think he'll be ready to go, and that's my number 3. 4, Anthony Edwards. He's definitely got the potential to be a really good player. While his defensive motor might not always be there, I think that if we get the right coach, there is definitely a couple guys in the league that could really benefit from getting good coaching defensively, and he's one of those. So if he can find the right coach, I think he'll be a really good defensive player, along with his offensive talent as well. And then 5, James Wiseman. I know there's definitely an interesting vibe around him going into the draft, but although he might not necessarily go as high as maybe he would have if, like, for, say, Golden State, but that just doesn't seem like a great fit. I think there is an ability for him to become very good, certainly defensively as a protector of the rim. While there's not all the talent right there at the moment, I think he's going to be a still very good solid center and could really help another team as well.
All right. My top 5, at 1, I've got LaMelo Ball. Best passer in this draft, hands down. It's not close. He's consistent elite reads. He's just one of the best passers, the best ball handler, super crafty, can get to any spot on the court with his ability to handle the ball. Great finisher for a guard, extremely crafty. He's 6'7". He can see over the defense. I think that gives him some defensive potential. I don't ever see him being a plus defender due to his lack of effort and low motor. And his jump shot will really determine his upside, but I think his jump shot will be fine. I think eventually he'll figure it out just like Lonzo did. He's a 38% three-point shooter in his 3rd season. And the difference between Lonzo and LaMelo Ball is that LaMelo is a score-first guard, but is also the best playmaker in this draft. And that's ultimately why he has my number 1 spot. And number 2, I've got Killian Hayes. And I really don't see any major flaws in his game. He can score from all 3 levels. He has tremendous shooting potential. He's got great scoring potential. He can create his own shot. He's got an array of step-back moves, side steps. He's got it all in his bag. He's also just as talented of a playmaker as LaMelo Ball is. Obviously not at that level, but he's going to be a great playmaker, and he competes hard on defense. People do not talk about this, but he is great in the passing lanes. He's kind of similar to Steph Curry in the sense that he's not a good individual defender, but he is a great team defender, and he plays hard. And then at my number 3, I've got Deni Avdija. His jump shot's going to determine his upside. It is historically hard to, with his poor free throw percentages, it's really going to be hard. But I think if there's one guy that breaks that trend in this draft, it is going to be him. He's incredibly versatile offensively. He can score around the hoop. He can pass. He can shoot. It's inconsistent, but when it's good, it looks really, really good. He's a great passer, solid rebounder, and on defense, he really tries. And if you aren't going to have the athletic gifts of an Anthony Edwards, but if you give effort, that can go a long way. I'm not saying he's ever going to be a great defender, but I think he can be solid. I think he'll be above average. At number 4, I've got Tyrese Halliburton. I don't think a lot of people talk about this, but this is a guy that went from somewhere around 200th in his class to a top 10 pick in 2 years. That is absolutely incredible. It's a testament to his work ethic, and he's really a complete player. Probably the second best passer in this draft after LaMelo Ball. He's a great shooter, great rebounder. He's an awesome defender. And in the 3-on-3 workout drills, I've been watching a lot of Mike Schmitz and the videos he posts. Tyrese Halliburton has sped up his jump shot, and he's able to effectively create his own shot. I don't know how that's going to translate to the NBA, but it's extremely promising. That's really the one major hole in his game outside of his strength, which I think is an easy fix once he gets in the weight room. And then at my number 5, I've got Anthony Edwards. Some people see him as the number 1 guy in this class, and then there are some guys who see him as the bust. I'm a little in the middle. I think that he's going to be a great scorer in the NBA. My questions for him is how else is he going to be able to affect the game? Defensively, he's got that potential, but potential is just potential. If you can't actually fulfill that potential, and his effort is very, very, very poor. And then my sleeper for the draft, I was bouncing between a couple guys, but I'm going to go with one of the best, in my opinion, one of the best pure scorers. It's Jaden McDaniels. I'm not a huge fan of guys who have high rankings in high school and then go into college and disappoint. But with Jaden McDaniels, I think I'm going to make an exception. This is a guy in the mold of a Kevin Durant or a Brandon Ingram. He has fantastic ball handling ability. He can score all 3 levels. He can attack the basket. He's a great 3-point shooter off the catch. He can create his own shot. And on defense, he competes hard, surprisingly. He's versatile. He does really well on guards. If he can just add some strength, if he can work on his decision-making, I seriously think he has potential to be one of the best players in this draft.
So for my top 5 players, these always fluctuate. So by the next time we do this, I might have a completely different list. But at number 1, I have Deni Avdija. He's the most portable player out of my top 3. And his ability to play make at a high level, his jump shot is a concern, but he's also a good defender, not a liability. His all-around game is just leads me to believe he's a really promising prospect. He does have areas to grow, but for now, I have Deni at number 1. He's just a very high IQ basketball player, and he's shown promise with his jump shot as well, especially from beyond the arc as in the corner as a catch-and-shoot player. In a situation like Golden State, that's probably the most effective way he could score. With Steph Curry setting him up for corner catch and shoots. It's going to be an easy way. He gets easy buckets. And then on the defensive end, he just has to be a liable defender. And then he's a good playmaker on the other end with and without the ball. So I have Deni at number 1. At number 2, for right now, I do have Killian Hayes ahead of LaMelo Ball. LaMelo Ball is just atrocious defensively. Let's get that out of the way. He probably has more upside, but I'm not sure about that right now. I believe Killian Hayes is a better player. LaMelo Ball, he's better defensively and offensively. I believe that his scoring ability right now, his shooting ability, even though it's a little bit streaky, his shooting ability is far better than what LaMelo is showing right now. And LaMelo is a better playmaker, hands down. No one's debating that. But let's not act like Killian Hayes isn't a good playmaker himself either. So I have Killian Hayes at number 2. LaMelo Ball, these 3 are all really neck and neck. So I have LaMelo Ball as a close 3. You could probably put him as a tie for number 1 if you want to put a T1. That's probably how I'm going to rank him. But LaMelo Ball is like my 3rd out of those, a 1C. And he's an excellent playmaker, but like I mentioned, he's atrocious defensively. Offensively, he's not a great scorer yet. He's not very efficient either. He just has a lot to improve on. The upside is obviously evident, but I need to see it to believe it. And with LaMelo, I'm just not sure how the outside is going to translate. I believe it's going to translate well, but in terms of actually seeing it to believe it, LaMelo hasn't showcased that he could be an elite scorer yet. He hasn't showcased that he can be an elite shooter. He's already an elite playmaker, and he hasn't showcased that he could be an elite defender. Until then, he's going to be at my number 3, but his upside alone keeps him in the top 3 alone. Number 4, I do have James Wiseman at number 4. Listen, you can bring up Onyeka Okongwu. They're both excellent big men, but in terms of James Wiseman, what I've seen from him in his high school sample size, it wasn't the most impressive. I'm not going to say it was by any means. I believe Evan Mobley coming out of next year's draft is going to be far better than James Wiseman. I watched a game where Evan Mobley just absolutely owned him in that matchup. But James Wiseman showcased pretty good offensive post skills. He's also a good rim protector. He could run the rim really well. He just does everything you want out of a traditional big man. He does have trouble in switches and the pick and roll, but I think as a center, with his developable skills, he's going to be a very good center in the NBA. And at number 5, I hate to say I do have Anthony Edwards over Tyrese Halliburton by a slim margin, and the reason why is the ability that I'm not sure what Thomas saw in the Mike Schmitz video. If you could send me that after the podcast, that'd be great. But the reason why I don't have Tyrese over Anthony Edwards is I haven't been impressed with his ability to create off the dribble. That's just point blank period for me. He does everything really well in the court. He's high IQ, and I would have him over Anthony Edwards really easily. But creating off the dribble, especially for a point guard, is so vital in this modern NBA, which is why I don't have him ahead of Anthony Edwards. But he's close. He's number 6. And my sleeper pick is Aaron Nesmith, the Vandy boy. I like Vanderbilt a little bit. But Aaron Nesmith is just incredible. He shot 2% from three-point land on about 8 attempts a game. That's insane. That's absurd. Any team who actually scouts really well should take him in the lottery, I believe. He's a lottery-level pick. He's worth of a lottery-level pick. But if he slips down, which I expect he will, I would want my Oklahoma City Thunder to take him, obviously. If he slips down to 25, I don't see that happening because he shouldn't slip down to 25. But he's an excellent player. He's not just a catch-and-shoot guy, as many people perceive. He's actually extremely efficient. And he could create off the dribble. He's a 3-level scorer, can do it all. So I believe Aaron Nesmith is kind of getting slept on. So is Trey Jones. Trey Jones is also an excellent defender in this draft class. He's a good offensive playmaker. He's not going to flash you away with the scoring, but he could score at will sometimes. He can get you a couple buckets here and there. But defensively, he's just one of the better defensive guards in the late rounds in this draft class. So I think he's going to be a very good NBA player. So those are my 2 sleepers. Those are my top 5 draft prospects. And there you have it.
Wait, one thing. Why did you question my James Wiseman when you have him above me?
What?
You have him at 4, I have him at 5.
What?
You said what?
Oh, no, because you had
Killian Hayes at 6.
Yeah, you had Killian Hayes. No, I didn't question James Wiseman. I just questioned why you have 5 guys ahead of Killian Hayes.
All right. There's one thing I've learned is I guess I'll watch more tape on Killian Hayes.
Yeah, he's a beast, telling you.
But that's going to do it. Thank you guys for tuning in. We know this was a little bit of a longer episode, but if you stuck with us from the beginning to the end, thank you for your time. We'll be back next week. As always, we're out. Peace.
Peace.
Is this the dagger?